On higher education will now come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kemple.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
Busey. Burns.
Here.
Burrows.
Here.
Clardy. Cole. Gonzalez. Here. Howard. Here. Villani. Rainey.
Here.
Quorum is present.
The quorum is present. As a reminder, anyone wishing to testify before the committee, please register at the kiosk located in the hallways beyond the hearing rooms. If you require assistance in registering or testifying, please contact the committee staff. Members, we're going to take care of a housekeeping item quickly. The chair moves to correct the minutes for the meeting held on March 20th, 2023. Is there any objection? Chair hears none, and the motion prevails. The chair lays out House Bill 1912 and recognizes Chairwoman Button to explain the bill. Please show Representative Clardy present.
Good morning, Mr.
And please show Representative Busey present.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you for this excellent opportunity to discuss the HB 1912. This bill represents a change to the student union fee cap at the University of Texas at Dallas. At UTD, the student union building is the heartbeat of the campus and fundamental to those attending the university. I know that very well because that's where my husband Darcy and I used to have chief dates. However, it has been 20 years since the student union building was renovated. The student body has grown for over 3 times in that period. Providing additional space and services are prominent to meeting the demands of the growing student body. As a result, the university has proposed a project to build a new student union building and renovate the current one. This past fall semester, students voted to raise the student union fee cap from $60 to $100 to finance the project. It received a majority vote in favor of the fee increase. This bill will allow UT Dallas to increase the fee by no more than 10% per year to a maximum of $100 in order to help the university raise the additional money needed. And I would like to point out when students voted on the same ballot, there was also a proposal for increase to the athletic fee. Guess what? Students voted no to support that proposal. So I also want everybody to know this write-up was prepared by my wonderful UTD intern, Henny, who also voted yes to the student union fee increase. And I believe we have a witness here to testify the bill. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Button. We'll call you back up to close.
Yes, sir.
Chair now calls Joshua Medeiros.
Okay. Call it one more time.
Josh Medeiros. Medeiros. We will show Mr. Medeiros registered against the bill, not testifying. Chair now calls Kruthi Kanduri. Yeah. And Ms. Kanduri, we have you registered as testifying in favor of the bill for yourself and the UT Dallas student government. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Krithi Kanduri. I'm a current junior majoring in cognitive science at the University of Texas at Dallas. And I also serve as the current student government president of UT Dallas. It's not every day a college student will come to you and ask you to raise the amount of money that they're paying, but that's exactly what I'm here to do. If you've never been to or heard of UT Dallas, our school is unique, especially when it comes to our students. Our student population is incredibly diverse, non-traditional, and very smart. We don't have a football team, but don't mess with our chess or esports team because they will blow you out of the water. But essentially, we're a school full of nerds. We've been growing at a rapid rate with over 31,000 students currently enrolled at our school and expecting another large class of students for our class of 2027. Another thing about UTD is that we are a 70% commuter school. This means that around 22,000 students drive to school every single day, with some people driving more than an hour every day just to get to class. In between classes, students will try and grab something to eat, find a study space, or hang out with their friends. The current state of our campus is that students are unable to eat on campus because it can take up to 30 minutes just to be able to order their food in our student union. Finding a table in the student union might as well be impossible, and study spaces have become more than scarce. The Association of College Unions International recommends student unions provide about 10 square feet of space per student. For a university that serves more than 30,000 students, our student union is 100,000 square feet, which is a third of the size that an adequate student union should be. Students are sleeping and eating in their parked cars because there simply isn't enough space on campus. Our university is growing rapidly, and with every new generation of students that come to UTD, there is more excitement, more engagement, and more interest in being present on campus and being a part of campus activities and organizations. We have nationally ranked fusion dance teams that resort to practicing in the lobbies of academic buildings because there are no recreational spaces large enough that are available for students to use. The fact that I'm here today on behalf of the student body who voted yes to increase student fees shows how urgent the need for a bigger student and better equipped student union is. There were multiple forums held to inform students and to receive student questions regarding the referendum as well. This is an informed vote by the student body. Our student government has also written a resolution in support of the student union fee, and while we understand, probably better than anyone, how an increase in student fees can be frustrating to say the least, the understanding that better facilities are necessary for UTD to continue to grow is why we voted in support. My little sister is graduating high school in May and has just committed to UTD. I want to know that I, along with my peers, have left the school better than when we came into it, and I want my little sister, along with countless future generations of Comets, to be able to experience a better UTD and be inspired to leave the university better than when they came into it themselves. Thank you so much for your time, and I sincerely hope you consider voting in favor of this bill.
Ms. Kanduri, thank you very much for your testimony. Please show Dr. Lalani present. Members, do we have any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against House Bill 1912? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Chairwoman Button to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. I close, and thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. The chair lays out House Bill 1595 and recognizes Chairman Bonin to explain the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I have a committee sub.
No, we don't have the sub.
Mr. Bonin, we don't have the sub yet, so
Okay.
we're just going to lay out the HB.
All right, very well, thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I appreciate the opportunity to present House Bill 1595. This is a really transformative piece of legislation for higher education in the state of Texas. And what we're seeking to do here is to really elevate our research institutions in the state to a level where we become, from my perspective, the intellectual capital of the world. We have amazing schools as we sit here today, and certainly we have our two public flagships in the state that are fantastic. But what we want to do here is really raise the bar so that in a state of 30 million people and growing, that we have first-class research institutions for every kid growing up in the state of Texas, and that we lead this country in higher education. The strategy underlying the bill is several-fold. So what this does is it takes the current NRUF and it changes the name. It takes the endowment in the NRUF and it adds to it substantially. And then it establishes eligibility criteria. So PUF institutions would continue, obviously, to have access to PUF funds. And in addition to that, they would be able to continue to receive core research support funding. And this new fund, the Texas University Fund, would be eligible to non-PUF institutions that meet specific criteria. And importantly, any non-PUF institution that met that criteria would qualify. So this doesn't restrict it to the 4 schools that would currently be eligible, but it leaves it open so that future universities would be able to access it. Important to me in structuring this was that when that happens, we don't want to dilute the benefit to the schools that are in it. So if you look at the permanent endowment for education research, or the peer tier of the fund, which is 75% of it, there are 2 levels. One level is based on $45 million in federal and private sponsored research expenditures. And then level 2 is base funding that is based on $20 million. So should another institution hit that threshold, they would qualify. But then what we've structured in here is that the state would have to add to the endowment an amount calculated to not dilute the benefit to the other institutions. And that's been an internal structural challenge with the current NRUF, is that as more schools qualified and came into the endowment, then the benefit to the institutions that were in the endowment became less and less over time. So we've sought to address that. And then there's a performance funding element, which is really important, and that's based, again, on federal and private sponsored research expenditures, 85%, and then also research doctoral degrees that are awarded. And the reason that matters is it provides an incentive to continue to perform and to continue to be competitive. And so I think that's another important aspect of what we're doing in here. We'll have a lot of, well, we may have some other testimony with regard to this, but I think this is really something we are not going to have an opportunity to do very often. This could make a difference for higher education in the state of Texas for many decades to come. And when we look at what's been done in other states and in their public university systems, it was based on decisions that were made by leaders many, many decades ago, like 2 generations ago. And we'll see the benefit of this in the short term, but the benefit of this, I think, could be most dramatic when you start to look 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And people will actually look back at this and say, that was transformational. That fundamentally changed higher education in the state of Texas. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have in terms of the bill or the purposes or the technical aspects of it, but that's the gist of what we're trying to achieve. There are some changes that we'll be making as we go forward. Some of that has already been identified. So, for example, a little pet peeve of mine is if you put, say, $20 million and $45 million into statute, it's pretty much guaranteed that will become outdated if you wait long enough. So I would expect that as we think of a change, some of the changes, one will be to put an inflationary index to those numbers, just so that it grows appropriately with time, not to make it harder for anybody to access those funds, but so that the numbers don't become outdated. And there'll be some other similar items that may come up. But with that, let me just go ahead and take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Bonin. Members, we have any questions for Dr. Bonin? One, Ms. Cole?
Dr. Bonham, can you tell me again what the annual appropriation amount is?
That's a really great question, and that's something that I neglected to point out. So there's an initial proposed endowment, that initial funding in this version would be $3.5 billion, and that would be one time. But importantly, there is an annual ongoing contribution, and that's really important to the long-term performance of this strategy. And what is proposed is $100 million a year maximum based on investment earnings from assets in the ESF.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Paul?
Yeah, Dr. Bond, going back to this idea about tagging it for growth or inflation and everything, would this 100 million be tagged also? That it would change with that growth?
Yeah, again, I think that's an excellent point. I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I wouldn't mind if we bumped it up a bit, but certainly indexing that limit makes perfect sense.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Chairman Bonin. I appreciate the layout. The current, let me see, it's the NRUF, the National Research University Fund. What's the current corpus of that?
I'd have to check. I want to say it's around 900 million, but I'm not certain.
So we're taking that fund, basically renaming it, rolling it over, and turning that into the TUFA fund, correct?
And then making an additional capital contribution.
Yeah, and I don't want to, I know we're laying out the original bill, not the committee sub, so I'm not sure if I'm blending this, but because we're taking money from the 3.5 intended appropriation, that will move into the fund. As I understand, that wouldn't really work against us or count against us in the budget cycle, and thank you for your work there, as far as the spending cap rules, any of those other budgetary constraints we may have. Did I read that correctly?
So if it's constitutionally dedicated, which is the point that you're making, which is a good point, then that would not be revenue that counted toward the spending limit.
All right, so we can move this to further our institutions of higher learning in Texas, really grow out these research funds and look forward to the dividends it pays the state. Is that the hope of your bill?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
And Dr. Bonin, just to make sure that, I mean, there is constitutional amendment to follow this that will enable everything, correct?
That is correct. There's another piece of
And it
legislation.
goes to the voters to allow everything that you just laid out to happen, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. We will call you back up to close, Doc.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. The chair now calls Lawrence Chauvin. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak before you this morning. And more importantly, I want to thank you.
Let's just get you into the record.
Oh, I'm Lawrence Skuvanek, president of Texas Tech University.
And you are registering on behalf of Texas Tech University on the legislation, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I won't repeat what I just said, though. I want to thank you for your visionary leadership and Chairman Bonin as well. As Chairman Bonin said, the Texas University Fund represents a transformational opportunities and benefits, not only for the universities that it would support, but for this state and the citizens that we serve. This additional, predictable, reoccurring funding stream would strengthen the competitive position of research universities like Texas Tech enabling us to better recruit and educate our students, to better recruit world-class faculty that generate research expenditures that contribute to economic development. I'd like to provide a brief historical perspective of how the upward trajectory of Texas Tech University has benefited from state support. House Bill 51 was passed in 2009 during the 81st legislative session, providing for the establishment of the National Research University Fund and eventually the Texas Research Investment Program. When that happened in 2009, Texas Tech's research expenditures were $86 million, and we had awarded 201 doctoral degrees. For this past fiscal year, our research expenditures were $218 million, and we awarded 441 doctoral degrees. But even before we gained eligibility for the National Research University Fund in 2012, it changed the way we operated and our way of thinking. We were more progressive in how we recruited and educated our students and how we grew our research enterprise. It was in 2015 that Texas Tech University earned Carnegie R1 status, or is what's sometimes referred to as Tier 1 research status. That distinction was reaffirmed in 2018 and 2021. And Texas Tech is now one of 21 Carnegie R1 or Tier 1 research universities in this nation that is also a Hispanic serving institution. I'd like to highlight some of the achievements at Texas Tech since 2012 when we began to receive the benefits of NRUF. Today, Texas Tech enrolls more than 40,500 students. That's an increase of 25% over the past 10 years. Graduate enrollment is up 36%. But as we've grown, we've also increased student success. Just in the past 5 years, our 4-year graduation rates have gone up 9%, and our 6-year graduation rate is up 5%. Last year, we awarded 9,100 degrees. That's a 36% increase over the past 10 years. Doctoral degrees awarded since 2012 have increased from 254 to the 441 I mentioned earlier. According to the National Science Foundation, Texas Tech now ranks 41st in the nation in terms of doctoral degrees awarded. From 2012 to fiscal year 22, research expenditures have grown from $135 million to $218, and federal research expenditures have increased from $30 to $45 million. In this past year, Texas Tech received more than $65 million in federal research awards, which bodes well for an increase in federal research expenditures going forward. Since gaining NRUF eligibility, Tech has been able to hire 5 members of the National Academy of Engineering and 1 member of the National Academy of Science. Our endowment has increased from $400 million to $1.1 billion, in part because of the matching support of the Texas Research Incentive Program, but also I believe that our alumni were invigorated and proud of the success they saw, not only in terms of our student success, but our research stature. But I would want to emphasize that numbers don't tell the whole story. As a mathematician, I've often been accused of being a bean counter. But there's a bigger story behind all of this. Texas Tech has always engaged in research that matters to West Texas, but has benefits for the whole state. As an example, in just this past August, the National Science Foundation established 4 new research centers in the United States. One of those was awarded to Texas Tech University. It's called the Center for Advancing Sustainable and Distributed Fertilizer. It represents an award of over $50 million. This program deals with the production of fertilizer with the objective to increase food production, enhance sustainable agriculture, and lessens our dependence on international sources for nitrogen-based fertilizers. The National Academy of Science member I mentioned earlier is a world-renowned researcher dealing with how plants adapt to environmental stresses, extreme heat and cold. Texas Tech is in the perfect environment for that kind of research. Texas Tech leads the nation in natural fiber and biopolymer research, has a strong focus on groundwater and surface water conservation, and coordinates the Texas Produced Water Consortium that serves the needs of the petroleum industry in this state. Texas Tech has increasingly improved its footprint in national security through our collaborations with the Pantex facility in Amarillo. In the past year, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board authorized Texas Tech to offer a doctoral program in One Health Science. This program represents a collaboration between our School of Veterinary Medicine in Amarillo and the Texas Tech University Health Science Center, addressing the interplay of zoonotic diseases, that is, diseases that are transferred between human and animal populations. We offer the only PhD in wind engineering in the U.S., and our undergraduate programs provide a significant pool of talent that supports the state and the nation's growing wind energy program. I use these examples to demonstrate how this state's investment in higher education, and specifically the emerging research universities, has made a tremendous difference for these schools. The new reoccurring fund established in House Bill 1595 and HJR 3 would allow Texas Tech to continue our efforts to recruit and educate students and conduct research that makes a difference to our state and nation. This would be a significant step in strengthening Texas as the knowledge capital of the nation. Thank you, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Mr. President, thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Burrows.
Mr. President, I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity to, tell you how proud I am of Texas Tech, obviously, being out there, and kind of pointing out something you mentioned in the middle of what you were saying is this is not just about, Texas Tech and helping, advance and grow it. It's also about the region that Texas Tech is in. And a lot of the research that you guys are leading on deals with our food, fuel, and fiber. I mean, it's agriculture, it's energy, it's water. And if we're not looking at sustainable agriculture and produced water and things of that nature that you guys are leading on, nobody else is doing that. And we're already leading. But I think this idea will do so much more for the industry that's so vital, not only to our region of the state, but the entire, state of Texas. And I think that's probably going to be true as we hear from University of Houston and Texas State and everybody else as well. So thank you.
So thank you, Chairman Burrows. So we're celebrating our centennial, and we were established 1923 in what many would consider the middle of nowhere. And in some ways now, we're the center of everything: agriculture, energy, health, to the points you just raised. And also to the broader benefit of this. This state loses about 30,000 students a year that decide to go to college outside this state. Of course, we import some, but there's a net loss of 15,000, 16,000 students. Students need to see this state as having the research universities of the highest caliber that are the best alternatives for them. Why would you want to leave this state with the best economy, be educated somewhere else and come here? And also, Texas does not get its fair share of federal R&D obligations. California gets about $20 billion, Texas gets about $6 billion. I believe this bill would make a difference in Texas procuring those type of research investments.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, members. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here. Chair now calls Neil Smatrisk.
That was pretty good.
Oh, thank you. Mr. President, we'll get you into the register. You're registered as Neil Smatrisk on behalf of the University of North Texas, testifying on the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Chair Kempel, Vice Chair Paul, and members of the committee. My name is Neil Smatrisk, President of the University of North Texas, and I'm testifying on HB 1595. I want to begin by expressing our deep appreciation for Chairman Bonin, Speaker Phelan, and the legislative leadership. This is really visionary, and this is a big deal. Their foresight in developing this concept of the Texas University Fund will pay off dividends for decades. The significant investments included in HB and for recognizing and supporting the elevated role our institutions have to play to create a strong Texas economy. The University of North Texas is the fourth largest and fastest growing university in the state with an enrollment of over 44,500 students. We're committed to the fundamental outcomes the state demands of higher education, providing Texas with a strong workforce that drives our economy, particularly in the rapidly growing North Texas area. Over the past 3 years, we've defied national trends by increasing enrollment 13.5% and graduating about 11,000 students a year. Since 2015, the same time as Texas Tech and my good colleague Lawrence has mentioned, we have been designated as a Carnegie Tier 1 research institution. And we joined several of our Texas peers as only one of 21 Carnegie R1 universities that are federally designated as Hispanic serving institutions. Since achieving R1 status, we've continued to make important strides in our research infrastructure. We have the largest research park in our region with nearly 300 acres of space dedicated to science, technology, and engineering. Last year, we awarded about 300 doctoral degrees. We've more than tripled our total research expenditures since becoming a Carnegie Tier 1. They're up about 212%, from 29 million to over 91 million of NSF HERD research expenditures. In fact, our FY22 research awards were up 14% over the previous year, and this year, our research awards were up over 40% from last year. Actually, this year at this time, we've already exceeded last year's total research awards as a result of incredible efforts of our principal investigators. So we're really doing pretty well right now. So why is research important to the state? I'm a biologist, and I was trained as a researcher and neurobiologist. I believe scientific discovery is incredibly important to keeping our state and nation globally competitive, and I'm proud of our commitment to research, development, and innovation. As lawmakers, I think I might resonate most with all of you in terms of the broader impacts of research on economic and business that come from forward-thinking long-term investments, the kind made by House Bill 1595. Investing in research leads to a significant return on your investment, paying dividends directly back to our state. It increases our ability to attract federal and private research funding, and most importantly, these investments are seed capital in our institution that lead to real-world outcomes, like the creation of new discoveries in businesses, the production of highly skilled workforces, and to advance our local, regional, and state economics. And as my friend Lawrence said, to make sure that students will stay in Texas because they have first-choice institutions to attend, and attract students from around the world to come to the strongest state economy in the country. UNT is primed to meet our needs and the needs of the state. And we've proven that we can maximize return on investment in our research enterprise with strategic targeted initiatives. For example, we have a strong Department of Defense partnerships. We're working with the Army to develop next generation soldier protection technologies, ballistic materials, and shelters that keep them safer. We've also leveraged our support from your funding of the additive manufacturing research that we do. We have the best additive manufacturing research in the state and one of the top 3 in the country. This novel research methodology allows us to build hybrid materials and metals that can advance hypersonic air and space travel, and we're working with NASA across multiple projects related to future space travel. We have incredible opportunities in our biomedical engineering and in our Biodiscovery Institute, led by National Academy of Science and Royal Society member, one of a handful in the state, Richard Dixon, where we're busy developing new methodologies for more easily producing biopharmaceuticals, as well as strange things like how shape memory polymers can create biomaterials that can help us as we seek new medical technologies. We're working with the National Security Agency and Department of Homeland Security on innovative technology to outsmart cyber criminals and a host of other things that our research directly benefits the state for. Beyond the economic and business benefits, increased research improves the academic caliber of our institution and our desirability. And that's an important thing for our state. Investment in research is critical in attracting and recruiting top researchers from across the country, elevating academic rigor, and creating opportunities for our students to participate in cutting-edge research and then go on to become entrepreneurs and inventors on their own. As the Texas population continues to boom, the state demands more excellent world-class institutions of higher education. We need to be committed to growing the state's top talent pipeline, keeping our best Texas students from leaving the state by creating more nationally prominent universities, and ensuring Texas remains at the forefront of research-related innovations, discoveries, and economic development. HB 1595 will establish a permanent endowment that will be transformative for UNT and the state of Texas. I deeply appreciate how this plan implements an outcomes-based funding model for a portion of the funding that will ensure our institutions are held accountable to your goals and priorities, and incentivizes us to push ourselves forward and to continue growing. That's going to be a key thing and will deliver key benefits to our state. Given our population growth coupled with our state's unmatched success in creating and attracting companies to relocate here, especially in the North Texas area, which is booming, this investment will become integral to tomorrow's Texas. The TUF plan will allow the state to accommodate population growth and expand the talent and discovery pipeline necessary for Texas to retain our competitive business advantage. We're honored that Texas University Fund recognizes and supports the University of North Texas, and again want to express our appreciation to Chairman Bonin, this committee, and the legislative and executive leadership of our state. We're committed to your priorities, and we look forward to meaningful and rapidly expanding our research enterprises to the benefit of the entire state. Thank you for the opportunity to come before you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, thank you, sir. Appreciate you being here today. Chair now calls Renu Khator. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Renu Khator with the University of Texas. Oh, excuse me. I feel Houston's misery.
And Texas is too.
Yeah, that's what we shared the same fate at the hands of Miami. We show you registered University of Houston system testifying on the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Renu Khator, Chancellor of the University of Houston System and President of the University of Houston. Thank you, Chairman Campbell, Vice Chairman Paul, and the members of the House Higher Education Committee for the opportunity to be here today to testify on House Bill 1595 and House Joint Resolution 3 by Chairman Bonin. A great appreciation for Chairman Bonin for all of his leadership, passion, and dedication to higher education as well. Previous legislations that created Co-Research Fund and National Research University Fund have provided us the platform to more than double our research in recent years. While they have been great starters, now we are at a point where we need a permanent, sustainable, and flexible fund to take our research capabilities to the next level. Therefore, we are grateful to the potential to create the Texas University Fund, which would help not just the University of Houston, but also several other universities that are on the cusp of becoming research powerhouses for our state. Excellence requires resources, and I'm very grateful to see your interest in lifting us all. I have been blessed to be in my position for the past 15 years, and I could brag about the University of Houston even in my sleep. However, I have 5 points to make in regard to this legislation, and therefore I'm going to focus on those at this point. Number one, it is important that once created, the fund has a mechanism to grow in future years. Thank you so much for providing a mechanism in this legislation and in the joint resolution to do exactly that. Point number two, it is important that the fund is managed by an entity and in a manner that gives us the maximum returns. Point number 3, it is important that the performance measures used in the structure are as objective as possible. I thank the coordinating board for their efforts in this regard, and I know that they continue to believe in it as well and looking to see if there is any further enhancement needed. Point number 4, it is important that the fund provides us with maximum flexibility to build our research infrastructure and capabilities. I know your interest is in growing more top-tier research universities, and we can do so if we have flexibility to invest strategically in any aspect of research infrastructure and capabilities. Point number 5, and that is my final point, it is important that we do not lose the momentum we have already created, and therefore we have the funds to immediately invest in our research infrastructure in the new fiscal year. These pieces of legislation, as you've heard from my colleagues, they truly represent a transformational change that will build a strong and a stronger Texas, not just for us, but for our future generations. I thank you for your time today and your leadership always. We remain grateful for your support and know that none of our successes would have been ever possible without your support, without your passion, without your vision. We remain committed to working with you on any aspects of these legislations, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for being here today. Members? One question, Mr. Paul.
Yeah, Chancellor, it's good to see you today. I was hoping we would be celebrating a little bit more in the basketball realm. As Chairman also was just saying, I guess one team kind of took us both down there, but hate to see that. But good to see you. And I think this bill is exciting, and I'm excited to see this bill go forth. And you think that this will put us all on the next step to be in those top-tier universities across the nation?
Yes, thank you. I certainly do that. And I'm really happy to see, as I said, excellence doesn't just happen on its own. It did not happen for the 2 flagships. Have been a lot of investments made, and this is time to lift more institutions. And I am so happy to see it's not just us, but there's an opportunity for so many institutions to really get to their next level of excellence, because that's what we are going to need in our state.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. Ms. Couture, thank you for being here today. Chair now calls Kelly Damphouse. Mr. President, we have you registered as Kelly Damphouse with Texas State University, registering to testify on the legislation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Damphouse, and I am the president of Texas State University. And let me begin by thanking all of you for all that you do for the state of Texas and for higher education in Texas. I'm especially grateful for Dr. Bonin's decision to file and to champion HB 1595 and HGR 3. I'm grateful today to have a chance to share with you a little bit about Texas State University's research accomplishments. Many of you are likely aware about something about our history. We were founded in 1899 as a teacher's college and normal institute back then. And you may also know about our rapid growth in student enrollment of 39,000 students this past fall. We're the second most applied to school in the state of Texas, second only to my alma mater. And our undergraduate population puts us at the 25th largest university in the country. You're probably less familiar with our meteoric rise in national research prominence over the past 20 years. The proposed investment by this legislature to create the Texas University Fund would have the same kind of transformative impact on my university and the other 3 universities that are named in the bill that the creation of the Permanent University Fund did in 1876, some 150 years ago. Texas State's game-changing research feeds innovation and new knowledge across the country and around the world. Our faculty's research creates breakthroughs in public health and public safety, materials and the environment, data science and analytics, and STEM education, just to name a few. Texas State's formal efforts to transform into a research university began in 2012 when we achieved the status of an emerging research university. In 2016, we were classified as an R2, or Doctoral University of High Research Activity. That's the second highest designation for research institutions in the state, in the country. Now we're reaching for that top tier, and we've already surpassed several of the metrics used to achieve R1, most notably research expenditures. This past year, for example, our research and development expenditures nearly tripled compared to a decade ago, to $110 million. That's higher than many R1 institutions in the country, putting us in the top 20% of universities nationwide on university and research spending. And we're on track this year to have $130 million in research and development. Just recently, we've been awarded $10 million from the U.S. Department of Transportation, $5 million from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, $12 million from the U.S. Department of Justice, and another $1 million from the Department of Labor to conduct research on our university. Although we're proud of these accomplishments, we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible. Texas is the 9th largest economy in the world. We only have 2 universities in the top 100 in the country in research expenditures. Not that I'm competitive or anything, but California has 10. We can do more, and the TUF allows us to do that. The current economic climate suggests that this is the perfect time to attract and retain more of the best and brightest thinkers in the world. And I'm not just talking about faculty, but also students as well. Adding 4 more Texas universities to the top 100 of the NSF rankings is achievable, and the TUF is the best way to make this happen. Perhaps the biggest way the TUF will help will be to address our relatively limited research infrastructure. Most externally funded research is awarded either implicitly or explicitly based on the applicant's resources, skilled people, sophisticated equipment, advanced facilities, and administrative support. While the faculty on the 4 universities listed in the TUF bill have done a remarkable job in building our research success, it's been done on a restricted resource base that unfortunately cannot scale up fast enough to move us quickly into the top 100 in the country. For us to overtake the schools that are already in the top 100, all 4 of the TUF schools need additional research facilities, additional research faculty, and additional staff to run labs, write grants, and recruit graduate students and postdocs. The investment we're discussing today will attract future researchers to Texas and will bring a positive return on investment for many decades to come. Texas State is already a high-performing research university, but we can do so much more with your help. The creation of the TUF is one of the best financial investments we can make on behalf of the taxpayers of Texas. It will yield new jobs, new companies, new inventions, new investments of private and federal dollars to our state. The future of our state as a world thought, research, and economic leader is directly tied to this bold endeavor. Thank you for considering it, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Chair.
Mr. President, thank you for being here this morning. Members, thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much.
Members, we have the Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust Company as a resource witness here today, if anybody sees fit. Just no questions. We'll show them registered on, not testifying. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 1595? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Chairman Bonin to close on the bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to working with you in the committee. I close.
Thank you. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. There's no objection. Chair hears none. HB 1595 is left pending. The chair lays out HJR 3 and recognizes Chairman Bonin to explain the HJR.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HJR 3 is the accompanying proposed constitutional amendment for House Bill 1595. It amends the Constitution to change the name of the National Research University Fund to the Texas University Fund. The bill defines an ongoing revenue source consisting of interest accrued from the earnings of the Economic Stabilization Fund. And finally, the bill would constitutionally dedicate $3.5 billion from state revenues to increase the corpus of the fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, we have any questions? Then we'll call you back up. Thank you. Kicking chairs over this early? Chair now calls Lawrence Chauvin with Texas Tech University. And I would assume a lot of this is ditto on the enabling legislation, so if you can just
Yes,
read
sir.
your name into the record, we'll show you as testifying on.
Lawrence Skubanek, President of Texas Tech University. Mr. Chairman and members, I would just reiterate the points that I and my colleagues made earlier about the enormous impact this would have on our ability to advance our stature.
And you're with Texas Tech, and we have you registered as testifying on
Yes, sir.
HJR. Thank you, sir. Sorry.
Okay. So beyond that, I really would have nothing further to add.
Thank you again for being here. Chair now calls Neil Smotrisk.
Thank you, Chairman Kemple. My name is Neil Smatras, President of the University of North Texas. I'm testifying on HJR 3, and I will simply reiterate my past
Thank you, sir.
comments.
We
Thank
appreciate it. Members, no questions. Thank you for being here. Chair now calls Rena Couture.
I'm Renu Couture, Chancellor of the University of System and President of the University of Houston, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the University of Houston for for Joint Bill number 3.
You're registered as Rena Couture for the University of Houston System, testifying on HJR 30. Is that correct?
Thank you.
Thank you. Members? Chair now calls Kelly Damphus House.
Chair.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My name is Kelly Danfus. I'm representing Texas State University here speaking on HGR 3, and I have nothing to add except to reiterate the importance of the TUF.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Thank you for being here. And again, members, we have resource witnesses from Texas Treasury Safekeeping Trust Company. We'll show them registered on, not testifying. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HAR 3? Hearing and seeing none, the chair recognizes Chairman Bonin to close on the HAR.
I close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no objection, the HAR will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The HAR is left pending. Thank you, sir. The chair lays out HB 2026 and recognizes Chairman Darby to explain the bill. Mr. Darby, do you have a substitute? No. The chair,
He says yeah, I have a substitute.
okay. The chair offers a committee substitute to HB 2026. Mr. Darby?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, we've been here before. We're trying to get this rural vet incentive program off the ground and running and money into the hands of the students. So during the rulemaking process for House Bill 1259, which we did last session, we came across a few additional items that need to be addressed to properly administer the program. Last session, we added Texas Tech Vet School to the program. We required applicants to enter into repayment agreements with the applicable university systems, either Texas A&M or Texas Tech. However, part of the bill opened it up to other vet schools throughout the country, and so it's difficult to enter into an agreement with a school that's not part of the agency that's going to be overseeing the account. So this committee substitutes make that change. Last session, the legislature expanded eligibility to include certain out-of-state veterinary students. And so what this committee substitute does is say these students must enter into an agreement with the Higher Education Coordinating Board, which manages that program. So secondly, as written, the Rural Vet Program is available only to certain individuals enrolled in out-of-state college of veterinary medicine at the time of the application, while graduates of Texas A&M and Texas Tech may only apply to the program for up to 4 years after they graduate. House Bill 2026 expands the eligibility to include any licensed graduate of an accredited college or veterinary medicine within 4 years of graduation. The committee substitute includes preference language, which prioritizes Texans, but expands the program for other potential applicants. If bright minds want to come to rural Texas and practice, we should not turn them away. Also, the committee substitute increases the population bracket from 100,000 to 150,000 to allow for larger rural counties to participate in the program. So, members, at the end of the day, Texas is a big state. We have vital needs for veterinary medicine in rural Texas, and this bill hopefully will finally, now that we have some money added to the program, we started this back in 1990, and it's never been funded. Now we have a little money, and let's get this program off the ground. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
Members, Ms. Cole?
Can you tell us the fiscal note?
Well, I think the coordinating board should be here as a resource witness, and they may be able to answer the question. I'm quite frankly confounded by those figures. They're saying, among other things, that they need to hire 4 people to administer a program. There may be only 4 applicants for the program. Are they going to need to hire somebody to administer every one of the applicants to receive a participation in this program? So I think those are questions that could be reserved for them.
Thank you, Ms. Darby. We'll bring you back up to close. The chair now calls Tamara Walthall. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. We show you registered as Tamara Walthall, testifying on behalf of yourself and the Texas Veterinary Medical Association for the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you,
Thank you.
Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, and good morning to members of the committee. My name is Dr. Tamara Walthall from Belmead, Texas. I'm here today representing more than 5,400 veterinarians and professionals of the Texas Veterinary Medical Association, which was founded 120 years ago in 1903. I serve as the immediate past president of TVMA, and I thank you for the opportunity to address you here today. I'm here to speak in favor of House Bill 2026, and we're very grateful for Rep. Darby's recognition of the critical shortage of veterinarians in Texas. Last session, the Texas legislature took a promising first step towards alleviating a shortage of food and large animal practitioners in rural areas of the state when it updated and funded the Rural Veterinary Incentive Program, RVIP. Student debt is an issue that I am passionate about. In fact, during my tenure as president of TVMA, I wrote an article in it, article which we've handed you. I will include that along with my testimony. On average, new veterinarians nationwide can expect to have more than $200,000 in student debt upon graduation. Texas veterinary schools fare slightly better, but can still expect to finish at A&M or Texas Tech with at least $140,000 of debt. In this day and age, students are faced with interest rates as high as 8% that begin accruing while they're still in school. Beginning your career with that level of debt can substantially limit your options in life, where you live, when you can own a home or a business. Even students who have an interest in large animal practice or in living in a rural community might find that they're better able to pay back their student debt if they take a more lucrative position with a small animal practice in a larger city. This furthers the cycle of veterinary shortages in rural Texas. The Rural Veterinary Incentive Program, RVIP, will provide qualifying applicants with a financial incentive to move and time to establish roots in the areas that currently lack access to veterinary care. I urge the committee to support HB 2026, which makes some important changes to the program. The bill, as substituted, will allow out-of-state veterinarians, not just those with previous ties to Texas, to participate in the RVIP. It also ensures that those with a prior connection to our state receive priority treatment in the selection process. As a Kansas State University graduate with no prior ties to Texas, but one who has practiced here for 40 years, I support these provisions. As Texas has a severe shortage of veterinarians in rural communities, we would be remiss in excluding qualified applicants who want to help us alleviate that shortage. HB 2026 also makes a necessary change to affect the legislature's intent by making the Higher Ed Coordinating Board a party to promissory notes made under the program. Under current law, it is unclear who the proper party for these notes would be for out-of-state grads who already qualify for the program. Such individuals likely would make up a very small percentage of awardees, minimizing the board's administrative costs. The bill also expands the definition of rural county from a population of 100,000 to a population of 150,000. This will expand the program's applicability to better align with areas where food and large animal veterinarian shortages are felt most acutely. In summary, HB 2026 will ensure that Texas casts the widest net possible to attract the rural veterinarians it needs going forward. This bill makes necessary changes to ensure that the program has the maximum impact. I urge the committee to vote in favor and send it to the full House for consideration. Thank you very much, and I will be very happy to answer any questions.
Dr. Walthall, thank you very much. Mr. Rennie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious as to how many, what the shortage is of rural veterinarians.
There's a shortage statewide. I can tell you right now, there is nobody in the city of Belmead operating veterinary medicine because I'm here. And at least my clinic is not hundreds of miles away from another veterinarian. So I don't have numbers for you, but I can tell you that the veterinarian growth in the state has nowhere near kept up with the growth of the state.
Thank you.
Members, Dr. Walthall, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Safe travels back to Belmead. We'll call up the resource witness with Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. Good morning.
Whoops. Didn't go the way I thought it would. Hi, my name is Chad Quintero-Pulse. I am Assistant Commissioner for Student Financial Aid Programs at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
And you're testifying on the legislation for the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board on the legislation. Thank you, members. Ms. Cole?
Can you tell me what the fiscal note is on this bill?
Sure. I haven't seen the committee sub, so I'm going to acknowledge that I don't know whether there are changes in the committee sub that would change our fiscal note. But the fiscal note was built in order to make sure that we built a long-term technological solution to support this program. It is a program that is handled differently than any of the other financial aid programs at the agency. So it's not one that simply just slides into technology that we already have. With the use of rural sponsors, in the bill. That's not a stakeholder group in which we've engaged. And the long-term needs of monitoring individuals to determine whether they're meeting the requirements or need to go into repayment. And then if they do go into repayment, managing that repayment over the whole life cycle. We wanted to make sure that we built technology that would support this program in the long run.
So do you have any dollar numbers?
I believe the dollar numbers, one piece of this was in order to quickly build the technology, in order to given the resource constraints within the agency, we included a fiscal note to be able to contract resources through DIR to support a quick build of the technology based on our recent work with DIR and their available contractors. We've estimated that the project would take about 25 weeks to build at a cost of about $1.2 million. And then the staffing that we included includes some short-term staffing, including like a project manager to manage the project, as well as the longer-term staffing in order to make sure that we've got the internal system support to maintain the project, as well as the individuals to support that. Now, in terms of how many individuals we need to continue to support that, once we see the committee sub, we can assess exactly which promissory notes we'll be holding versus which promissory notes might be held at the university systems for us to determine whether we've estimated the staffing level correctly.
So there will be an initial fiscal note and then a recurring one.
Right. The recurring is once we build the system, the maintaining the system is a very small annual cost. Really, the cost is in the ongoing staffing to support the system.
Thank you.
Members, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman. I've always supported the Higher Education Coordinating Board. It's one of my favorite agencies, as well as the Animal Health Commission. So I see you, Dr. Schwartz. I do want to work with the agency and with the bill author to talk about the fiscal note. I think that rural veterinarians are extremely critical, not only for animal health and safety, but for people health and safety. And I think that we don't need sometimes the red tape that we can talk through to fix. To minimize our ability to do good work here. And I think that Chairman Darby has a really great bill, and if there's a ways to think through the fiscal note, I want to be a partner in that, because maybe we don't need something in 25 weeks, and that it doesn't need to cost $1.3 million. I'm not trying to second guess the agency that I love very much, but I do want to find a way for us to figure out how to make this work so we can really take care of rural Texas. And I want to be a partner in that. Fair?
Yes, and fully acknowledging that the fiscal note for the technology was based on the kind of existing timeline for the implementation. Depending on, whether there's opportunity for us to have a greater length of time to prepare it, we might be able to do more in-house, things like that.
Or even if there's duplicative things that are happening, so you say you have to build out, having staffing, is there another ways of, I know there's lots of bills moving. I just think we can have a conversation about addressing the fiscal note in a way that can be helpful.
Yes, we're happy to do that.
Thank you. And I do love your agency very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Burns.
Well, and I love the agency as well, just put that out there. But I want to just kind of echo the concern there a little bit, and I know we're talking about the bill's file, we're talking about the sub, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
So it does allow for preferential treatment for Texas kids. So it probably may minimize the number of out-of-state applicants, although we welcome any applicants to the program. That might impact and like you said, your analysis was on the bill as filed, but I would anticipate, or maybe even ask you if you were considered that might decrease the fiscal note a little bit. And also, the number of applicants we anticipate to this program, if it's thousands, well, then I could see, a build out and all that kind of stuff. But just my country logic says if it's just a few, there might be a better way or a cheaper way or more efficient way to monitor the program going forward. But I think it's important, and just want to echo the concerns and also the interest of my colleagues on this deal.
Yes, once we see the community substitute, we'll definitely reassess to determine how that impacts what our responsibilities would be, as well as what opportunities there'd be to adjust.
Ms. Clardy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In developing the fiscal note, how many prospective applicants did you project for this program?
One of the things that we've focused on in terms of building our technology, trying to make sure that we build technology in a way that will support things long-term. We've definitely had situations where we thought programs would be small, and then they grew into big programs, and we weren't prepared. We didn't have not that we weren't prepared, we didn't have the technology to support that growth. So if based on further assessment, we're able to determine that this does appear to be a program that will stay small long-term, then that can definitely impact our assessment of the technology.
I'm not going to default to my lawyer mode and object to the answer is non-responsive. What I will do is just, and I appreciate the fact that you want some flexibility, you're building this out, just your best estimate, best feel for how large of a program this would be, in a reasonable range.
I don't have those figures with me.
Okay.
I can definitely look into that.
I would think that'd be an important factor to know when you're estimating the cost. And I would have asked this question to Chairwoman Howard if we sat next to each other like we used to, but I know we have several programs in the state where we are trying to do the same thing except for nursing. We do the same thing for medical doctors in underserved, underutilized areas where the state has programs where we will do either loan forgiveness or scholarships. There are very different ways we do this. Are those programs also administered through the Higher Education Coordinating Board?
Yes, they are. Those loan repayment programs are structured very differently than this program.
But it's the same concept.
Except that we don't hold promissory notes for those, which is a major difference. When you hold a promissory note, you need to maintain that servicing for the life of the loan. The loan repayment programs are set up for the physicians, nursing faculty, Teach for Texas, math and science scholars. Those are set up that we don't hold the promissory notes. Instead, the funding that's appropriated to the agency, we're then able to make direct payments to the loan holders based on each year of service that an individual provides. And so it requires far less technology and staffing than maintaining the length of a loan.
Well, having drafted a few promissory notes and having signed a few, they're not particularly complicated instruments. May require additional file cabinet or a folder somewhere, but it's a wrinkle. But it's not. That's not worth $1.3 million. And then I think there's institutions out there called banks, and they do this on a routine basis. There's probably already software available. We could probably plug it into the AI program, and it'd kick you out a software program faster than 25 months, I would think. What I don't want to see is that I want the coordinating board, and again, I love the co-board too, but we have numerous programs that operate very similarly, maybe not perfectly analogous, but very similarly. I don't want to balance the technology development for all the other programs and stick the tab exclusively on the vet board for a program that we need in rural Texas. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I would ask that we go back and look at how we're doing this. I think there's a simpler way, again, applying our simple, country boy logic to get this done. But the name of the game is to make funds available and to get Texans back where they belong. These foreign veterinarians that may have practiced at Kansas State, and inside every American veterinarian, there's a Texan trying to get out. And let's get them back here where they belong. So thank you for testifying.
Okay. Members? Chairman. Mr. Brandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, if we had, let's say, 20 veterinarians take care of this program, couldn't we do that with QuickBooks or something? Heck, I'd use Big Chief tablet and a ledger sheet. I just don't see any reason to spend that kind of money on a technology when you're dealing with such a small program.
A couple pieces that are unique about this program is the potential repayment. With loan repayment programs, we're simply making a payment to a lender on the behalf of a physician, a teacher, et cetera. Whereas this program, if someone doesn't fulfill the criteria, then we need to collect on that loan over the life of the loan. And loan servicing is a much more complicated effort than the simple payment of a grant to a student via their lender. And so that's a piece of this that does make it different than our loan repayment programs. And so we're working to try to make sure that we've got that right. Again, as I've mentioned, haven't seen the committee sub, and so want to look at that and assess as to how that changes things. But it's that loan servicing and it's the engagement of the rural sponsors. None of our programs have that kind of connection to them. And so we want to make sure. Absolutely want to look through and see what other solutions there can be. The fiscal note was based on bringing something up very quickly. So if there is more time for us to be able to bring that up, that would definitely impact the fiscal note as well.
I just think we need to look at how many are taking advantage of this and then look at what is a simple way of taking care of it. It doesn't seem like we need to spend that kind of money on 20 or 30 applicants. That's my only concern.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey. Members, thank you for being here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 2026? Hearing and seeing none, the chair recognizes Chairman Darby to close on the bill.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I really appreciate your comments and your questions and the direction that you're taking. Certainly, we want to work with this committee and the coordinating board to try to minimize that. It seems illogical to me. You have $1 million that we ultimately funded to this program. Once in 20 years, we fund $1 million, and then we want to spend $1.2 million to build a program to monitor the 20 or less applicants. It just doesn't make any sense, but I want to work with you. We'll work with the coordinating board to try to reduce that fiscal note, address any concerns you might have. But with that, I thank you for your time and favorable consideration.
Ms. Darby, thank you. The committee substitute for HB 2026 is withdrawn. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Oh, really? Really? She's already laughing. Members, Chair lays out HB 2132 and recognizes Representative Harris to explain her bill, which Mr. Clardy, I understand, is the first one.
Oh, here we go, members. Oh, no.
Here we go.
I'm fully prepared with jokes. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members. HB 2132 converts Texas State Technical College's Extension Center in Hutto to a fully fledged campus with the flexibility to operate multiple sites in East Williamson County. TSTC opened the East Williamson County Higher Education Center in Hutto in partnership with Temple College in 2013. TSTC, Temple College, and Texas A&M University, Central Texas, all teach classes at the facility. TSTC alone offers 6 programs at the facility: precision machining technology, welding technology, HVAC technology, industrial systems, culinary arts, and cybersecurity. And on a personal note, one of my brothers actually went to school there for welding and is a successful welder now. TSTC is preparing to construct a second facility at the site at an estimated cost of approximately $54.2 million, using CCAP funds authorized by SB 52 during the third special session of the 87th legislature in October of 2021, and additional bond authorization granted by the Bond Review Board in October of 2022. This facility will host a suite of programs focused on advanced high-tech manufacturing. Owing to the unusual statutory authorization for the center, TSTC's presence in Hutto is tied to its contract with Temple College, and the facility functionally operates as an extension center of TSTC's flagship campus in Waco. Given that TSTC is constructing a second facility using state dollars, it is wise to secure TSTC's permanent presence in East Williamson County in statute to protect the state's investment at the site. HB 2132 does exactly that. Additionally, since the East Williamson County Higher Education Center opened, Samsung has announced the construction of a major microchip manufacturing facility in nearby Taylor, Texas. TSTC anticipates that an additional site closer to the Samsung facility may be necessary to meet the expected workforce training demand resulting from the project. HB 2132 gives TSTC the statutory flexibility to develop that site in the future. To be clear, nothing in HB 2132 affects the leases Temple College and A&M Central Texas have entered into with TSTC in any way. If the bill passes as filed, those leases will remain fully in effect. With that, we have a resource witness, Joe Arnold of TSTC, to answer any questions you may have, and I respectfully reserve my right to close.
Mr. Clardy, I see a bunch of questions.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm confused, Mr. Chairman, by this bill. I thought, Representative Paris, after your announcement of your recent engagement, that the only bills that you'd be carrying would be Senate bills. Is that not?
That is a common
Well,
misconception.
why are you coming for the House? You've confused me on this.
I was duly elected to the House in November, and that's the body I'm serving.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you do know that a little picking on you at the committee level in no way excuses you from further hazing
Yes, I
on
know.
the floor of the House. I don't want there to be any confusion with that.
Thank you.
But I do appreciate you bringing this bill. And your brother's a welder, you say?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes, sir.
That's a very honorable profession. We need more of those, maybe not as many lawyers. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, do you have any more questions for Ms. Harris? Yes. Ms. Howard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
One of the things that has come up repeatedly in higher education over the years is the use of the Higher Education Coordinating Board to kind of be the determiner of whether or not we're expanding in areas that are already being served. That has come up in a variety of situations across the state. Can you respond to what the role would be of this expansion in terms of other institutions that may be offering similar credentials in the area?
Absolutely. So from my understanding, the facility that operates now already has a lot of the degrees that Samsung will need and even is currently using as they build their facility. And the next facility that they build will actually be a little bit more fine-tuned, I think, in providing those jobs and expertise to Samsung. And there's a couple other community colleges that operate in the area. Temple College is one of them, and they offer similar programs, but I think that this, as far as I understand, this would be viewed as complementary to everything that exists there. None of it would be overlapping. They all work together, they meet together, and they're very, very dedicated to making sure they're serving in different areas and they're not kind of getting in each other's way, but they're all working together to provide the needed workforce.
So complementary rather than duplicative?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman.
Ms. Cole?
Hello, Representative Harris. Congratulations on your first bill.
Thank you.
Are you planning on sending this to local and consent?
Yes, ma'am.
That's her plan.
That is my plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Harris. We'll call you back up to close. Members, we'll call up Joe Arnold with Texas State Technical College.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Arnold, thank you for being with us. Good morning.
Morning.
We have you registered as Joe Arnold, Deputy Vice Chancellor, testifying on behalf of TSTC on the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, as a resource witness, if there are any questions.
Okay, do resource members, do we have any questions for Mr. Arnold? Seeing none, best kind of testimony there is.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 2132? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Ms. Harris to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I would appreciate the committee's favorable consideration and would request this bill be sent to the local and consent calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Mr. Clardy, don't let her, she almost, she had a good step.
It's a question, Mr. Chairman. I just want to check the parliamentary inquiry for the chair. If any member of this committee votes against the bill, Ms. Harris?
That serves your.
Then that would preempt or would preclude the bill from going to the local and consent calendar.
That's correct, sir.
Didn't require the author.
Just one single no vote.
For any reason whatsoever.
For any reason.
Doesn't have to be a good reason.
I would
That's
like,
right.
Is there a
I'd like to
reason that
add-
somebody should not vote against this bill, Representative Harris?
I'd like to add that Representative Clardy has signed on to this bill and is in full support.
And is this committee well aware?
He just said no good reason.
This would not be the first
We all know
time.
Representative Clardy.
This would not be the first time I've voted against a bill that I co-authored. and joined author.
Yeah, that's, you were under the assumption that he hadn't done that before. Oh, thank you, Ms. Harris. Good job. We appreciate you. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Thank you. The chair lays out HB 683 and recognizes Representative Cole to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. House Bill 683 is a bipartisan bill with joint authors and co-authors from both sides of the aisle from all across the state. This is our third attempt with this bill, and I've carried this piece of legislation during all three of my sessions here in the legislature. The first time we considered the bill, it was on the calendar, but considered on the deadline, but the clock struck midnight. The second time it was considered, it passed out of this committee, passed out of the Texas House, but never received a hearing in the Senate Higher Education Committee due to Senator Creighton's injury late last session. House Bill 683 would allow EMS employees that are employed by a political subdivision to receive the same tuition exemption that our firefighters and police officers receive for similar identical courses. This bill would expand coverage to roughly 3,000 paramedics across the state, as most political subdivisions do not have standalone EMS departments, and combine them with fire departments. As a comparison, the city of Houston alone employs 4,000 firefighters that are currently eligible under the current provision. The nature of care provided by EMS is changing, and paramedics must be better educated about the expansion of their job and their responsibility. These courses will assist our first responders with their emergency preparedness and managing skills. I'm available for questions, but I know there will be two witnesses who may be able to answer any questions in more detail, and I reserve my right to close.
Ms. Cole, thank you. We will acknowledge your right. The chair calls James Campbell.
Good morning.
Campbell, good morning. We show you registered as James Campbell testifying on behalf of yourself and the Montgomery County Hospital District for the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, good morning. Thank you for your time. Just as you may know, nationally there's a paramedic shortage and call volume now is at historic levels. Unfortunately, that call volume and paramedic shortage and staffing levels is impacting us here in Texas, and we feel like this bill will transform our educational processes for the future. This bill would not only create educational equity with our partners that we work with in the streets each day, but it also helps with both recruitment and retention. It creates a firm educational pathway for our paramedics to grow into future leaders. Currently, I'm the chief of EMS for MCHD. I've been there for 5 years. Prior to my time at MCHD, I was a firefighter in Salina for 10 years. As a fireman in Salina, I got the opportunity to take advantage of the current law, and that really transformed my career trajectory to where I'm at today, and I would like to see that same opportunity for other paramedics so that we can be equitable with our partners in the streets. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Members, we have any questions for Mr. Campbell? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair now calls Selena Zai. I got that correct. Z?
My name is Selena Shia.
Wow, okay. Shia, thank you for being here today. We have you registered as Selena Gia, testifying on behalf of yourself and the Austin EMS Association for the legislation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us and for hearing this bill. Again, my name is Selena Shia. I'm president of the Austin EMS Association, and I represent over 500 paramedics and EMTs in Austin. And I can tell you that I've never seen staffing shortages worse for EMS. I read all of the industry news, and I see across the state that EMS systems are closing down due to staffing shortages and just other major issues. Alpine, Rouse, all over Texas, we see these issues, especially in rural communities, and especially at a time when we are asking more and more from our paramedics. We are asking them to be community doctors because a lot of the rural hospitals have closed. We're asking them to come to our houses, do diagnosis, provide breathing treatments and other life-saving treatments, and sometimes just routine treatment. And this bill will really allow us to be more well-rounded clinicians and to really take care of our communities where medical resources are lacking. We heard from the previous bill that in veterinary sciences and all sorts of medical sciences, we just have a shortage of personnel, especially after the pandemic. The other thing is, you heard from Chief Campbell, he was a firefighter who was able to attain an advanced degree and then become chief of EMS. That is what we see a lot, is that in fire and police, you get these advanced degrees, which are a requirement to take leadership positions. And we really want EMS professionals that can also get advanced degrees and become leaders in our own departments. EMS is absolutely public safety. We always talk about police, fire, and EMS. And yet somehow EMS is often treated as the redheaded stepchild, we say, and we seem to care a lot more about police and fire. Police and fire do have tuition exemption, which has built very, very brilliant leaders in police and fire, and we need that in EMS, especially as our call volumes go up and our services are needed more than ever. The number of paramedics that would be even eligible is only about 3,000, and like Representative Cole discussed, Houston Fire Department has 4,000 people, so it wouldn't even add that many people to have this exemption. And furthermore, we worked really closely with the university to develop caps so that it would not hurt those systems as well, and we have support from those systems. And with that, I'll close, and I just really want to thank you all for hearing us.
Ms. Gia, thank you very much, members. We have any questions? Thank you for being here today. Members, no questions. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against HB 683? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Cole to close on her bill.
Thank you, members.
Thank you, Representative Cole. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. The chair lays out HB 1604 and recognizes Representative.
Right here.
Okay, hang on, buddy. Sir.
We're very excited about this.
Oh, yeah, would just make sure. The chair recognizes Representative Gonzalez to explain this. Ms. Gonzalez, you have a substitute?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
correct? The chair offers a committee substitute to HB 1604. Ms. Gonzalez?
Thank you, Chairman. And just for clarification, the committee sub is only alleged council draft. But this bill is very simple. It just asks the Higher Education Coordinating Board, one of our favorite agencies, to do a report when it comes to special education. So as some of you remember, the legislature removed the cap for our K through 12 system. When it comes to higher ed, we have more kids who are being identified as as special education. So we have more kids being identified. We want to make sure that our processes and procedures are supporting them continuing their education into higher ed. I distributed a report that the Higher Education Coordinating Board did in 2020 has been very helpful, but it's only for IDD. When you think about special education or people with disabilities, it is a more expansive group, and so we just want to ask the Higher Education Coordinating Board to update this report to recover the spectrum of students with disabilities and highlight current institution policies promoting enrollment and success in higher education so we can use best practices across the board. These institutions will be able to learn from each other. Students will be, and their families will be better informed. And so we can also from there take the report and make any other legislative changes as needed. Members, we have heard from Commissioner Keller that we are very interested in building a talent-strong Texas. We can't afford to leave anyone behind when we think about these strategic initiatives that we're doing. Let's make sure all students have access to the opportunity to higher education. And so I ask favorable consideration of Committee Sub HB 1604 and happy to answer any questions, and I reserve the right to close.
Ms. Gonzalez, thank you. Members, we have any questions? We'll bring you up to close.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chair calls Augustine Villarreal. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing good.
Good. We show you's registered as Augustine Villarreal,
Yep, and
testifying on behalf of yourself for the legislation. Is that correct, sir?
Yep, and I'm actually advocating for this bill. I'm advocating.
Thank you, sir.
I'm advocating for it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name's Augustine. I'm with E4. I'm a post-secondary Texas student. And I have intellectual, and right here, it says right here, I'm a post-secondary Texas student with intellectual and developmental disability. I strongly support HB 1604. I believe we need more funding for higher education, specifically for students like myself, who are often not given the opportunity to reach our full potential. This bill is important to me because it helps students with disabilities go to college or programs such as E4 Texas, the program that I'm attending now. E4 is a post-secondary program for people with or without disabilities. At the Texas Center for Disability Studies at UT, I'm my third semester as an E4 student where I'm studying to become a paraprofessional right now. I intern at Eames ATS. It's a program similar to E4, but for older people. Because the opportunity to intern at this location and because of the other skills that have taught to me through the E4 Texas program, I'm learning ways to make money, have healthy relationships, be independent, even pursue more education in the future. In addition to more funding for post-secondary programs that aim at people with disabilities, we need the state to create more programs options. Right now, we have programs like E4 Texas, the PATS program at Texas A&M, and the LEAP program at Texas A&M. But that smaller number of post-secondary opportunities doesn't compare to the post options post-secondary options available to non-disabled students. This bill will help create more programs like E4 Texas so that people with IDD can have educational qualities. Students with IDD deserve a good future, and the state of Texas should invest in those future. One of the best ways for the state of Texas to prevent government dependency and promote equality among people with disabilities is to give us access to a quality education. Therefore, I'd like to see HB 1604 pass. As someone with another personal experience of the challenges that disabled people face when we try to access higher education, I will be happy to discuss this bill farther in person with any of the committee members. I appreciate support and effort in higher education in Texas. Please pass this bill.
Mr. Villarreal, thank you very much. Ms. Howard.
I would like it to be passed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. I would like for this to be passed too. And you're coming and giving testimony is just extremely wonderful that you're doing this, and you've done a great job.
Yeah, because the only thing I learned from this program was to have a voice, to advocate, to have the bills like higher education to be passed, to have people to have access to higher education, go to college, have an opportunity, go and get a degree or certificate or a bachelor's in any at a school. They can do something with their life, go and what's called get trained, do stuff. Yeah.
Well, you're a great example of how this works, so thank you so much for taking the time to be here. You did a great job today. Thank you.
I hope to see this bill passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chair now calls Ashley Ford. Ms. Ford, how are you this morning? Thank you for being here.
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Ashley Ford, and I'm with the ARC of Texas, and I am for this bill.
Thank you very much.
So y'all are getting a copy of my testimony. I just want to reiterate so many of the points that
I don't know that you can do it with that same enthusiasm, which was.
I mean, I don't want to follow that up.
You don't have a chance.
I don't have a chance. I'm not going to be as entertaining or wonderful of a speaker. I want to just emphasize here how much college really benefits the employment outcomes of people with disabilities in the state of Texas. And we don't know so much, which is why I think House Bill 1604 will be so beneficial, because we have an idea of probably what some of the barriers are, or what the accessibility needs are of people with disabilities, but we're not really sure. And so I believe that this report will help us have more information to make better informed decisions in the future. Along with my testimony, I have people with disabilities in Texas profile, and you can see from here that about 12% of Texans have a disability. And so we do not see that sort of same prevalence reflected in higher education settings for the most part. And so would really appreciate any support for this, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Another note I would like to say is that I'm currently the presiding officer over the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for Persons with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities at the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. This bill is not specific to intellectual and developmental disabilities, but I think that it will actually benefit the work that the Advisory Council is doing, because it does direct them to pull some things that we haven't been successful in getting so far. So,
thank you. Members, any questions? No? Thank you for being here.
thank you very much.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Cheryl. Go ahead. Ms. Cole?
Does your organization advocate for people with mental disabilities?
For people experiencing mental health conditions? Not specifically. So an estimated half of all people, or around 40% of all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, do experience some sort of mental health condition. So there is a lot of intersectionality from there, but specifically mental health conditions, no ma'am, it's intellectual and developmental disabilities.
Thank you. Members, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Chair calls Sabrina Gonzalez. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am. We show you as registered as Sabrina Gonzalez, registering on behalf of Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities on the legislation. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Chair Kemple and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on House Bill 1604. TCDD draws from the values identified in the Federal Developmental Disabilities Act, and as such, we find HB 1604 consistent with the goals of the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities. As has already been stated, the benefits of receiving a post-secondary education are clear, and this committee has acknowledged that a post-secondary education can increase access to job attainment, opportunities, economic stability, and personal growth. Texas has ambitious goals for higher education, as noted in the Higher Education Coordinating Board's 60 by 30 plan, and these goals cannot be realized without investment in the win for adults with disabilities in Texas. HB 1604 would assist lawmakers in getting a clearer picture of the current landscape for students with disabilities in post-secondary education and programs in Texas. And these insights could provide assistance on what policies would improve college attainment and access for students with disabilities. To create the report required by HB 1604, TCDD recommends utilizing the expertise of the Higher Education Coordinating Board's Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for Persons with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. This is the board that the previous witness, Ashley Ford, referenced. TCDD believes that the Advisory Council has extensive knowledge on students with disabilities in higher education, and that it's only fitting that the report be drafted with their insights. As stated, HB 1604 is consistent with our goals, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ms. Gonzalez, thank you. Members, do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 1604? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Representative Gonzalez to close on her bill.
Thank you, Chairman. And just for clarification, TCDD has to only testify on, so that's why they can't testify for it, just in case anyone was wondering, like, why are they on? But this report will look more broadly at all students with disabilities, including intellectual and developmental disabilities, but also vision, hearing, physical and mobility impairments, behavioral and emotional disabilities, and more. As we have done so much in the K through 12 world to support our kids with disabilities, whether it's increasing the weight for funding, creating programming, et cetera, we don't want their education opportunities to then stop. We want to be intentional and strategic about how do we continue it in a post K through 12 system. And so we really want to just start with a report that has a zero fiscal note. And so I'm asking for a favorable consideration, and I close.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 1604? Seeing none, the committee substitute for HD 1604 is withdrawn, and if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the bill is left pending. The chair lays out HB 989 and recognizes Representative Howard to explain her bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for giving me the opportunity to lay out House Bill 989. This would direct the Department of State Health Services to establish a state plan for preventing and treating human papillomavirus, or HPV, and the health problems that are caused by the infection, to be updated and reviewed every 5 years. HB 989 requires DSH's, Department of State Health Services, to work with the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to promote HPV immunization, screening, and awareness on college campuses. HPV has been linked to numerous cancers, including cervical, prostate, and throat cancer. According to the American Cancer Society, HPV is the most important risk factor for cervical cancer. In Texas, cervical cancer is the third most diagnosed cancer for women aged 20 to 39. Fortunately, an HPV vaccine has been available since 2006. According to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, this vaccine has a proven 97% effectiveness rate at preventing HPV-related cancers. When combined with regular screenings, HPV prevention measures have an even greater effectiveness. Yet, the rate for HPV immunization completion in Texas is less than 50%. Though ideally administered when youth are 11 to 12 years old, it is recommended for young adults up to 26 years of age. HB 989 proposes a practical plan to lower the HPV rate in Texas, in coordinating the resources of the state and its institutions of higher education to promote immunization and screenings. Texas can effectively lower our cervical cancer rates. I'm happy to take any questions and reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Any questions for the author? Mr. Clardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative Howard, for bringing this bill. Just to kind of clear the air, I've had a number of constituents and others contact our office about this bill, and I think, you know, looking around the room, there's a few of us that are old enough to remember there was a little bit of an issue, I think, under Governor Perry. There had been an initiative that was put forward concerning either to encourage and maybe perhaps to add this vaccination to the list of required immunizations. Am I remembering that correctly?
You're remembering that correctly.
Okay. And of course, if we come forward to more recent history with COVID, there's been a lot of discussion, pro and con, a lot of heated rhetoric, pro and con, about vaccinations generally. Can you, let me ask you a couple of questions with those two kind of bookends concerning this legislation and what you're trying to do. One, this bill does not require any sort of vaccination by anybody. Is that correct?
There's no mandate here, no.
No mandate whatsoever. And this vaccine, the origin of this vaccine, it's been available since when?
I believe it was 2006.
2006. And again, I don't pretend to be an epidemiologist or some sort of special training or expertise in development of vaccines. But this vaccine would have been done with, I'll just use the word traditional vaccine technology available nearly 20 years ago in its developmental stage.
Correct. In terms of safety protocols and that sort of thing, yes.
Can you address the efficacy of this vaccine? Because now we've had, one of the concerns about the more recent vaccines, the RMNA vaccines that we've heard a lot about, is that they were pushed forward very quickly. We just didn't have the history to look back in time to see what unintended consequences or negative health implications may exist with those vaccines. But now we have, I think, a fairly healthy and you know, some good empirical evidence about this vaccine. Can you address that for us?
Sure. As you point out, we've had since 2006 to be studying this, and according to the Centers for Disease Control, according to all of the scientific studies that have been done and that are looked at by the medical community, this is a highly effective and safe vaccine. It is unbelievably close to 100% effective at reducing certain cancers. And so there's just no question among the medical community that this is something that we want to encourage without mandating, but want to encourage the use of because it has been demonstrated to actually reduce precancerous cells, genital warts, and cancer itself. So we really want to promote this as it is a leading cause of cancer, cervical cancer among women. And this is a way that we can help avoid that and allow these women to lead healthier lives.
And as with any medical decision, the analysis has to involve some cost-benefit analysis. What is the risk, what is the reward for participating in this? I think one of the major objections, again, if I'm remembering this correctly, as originally proposed during Governor Perry's administration, it was going to add that to like the pediatric vaccinations, as I
Which is when this is recommended that you start it before sexual activity,
Right.
because that's how it's spread.
And certainly that would include shortly after childbirth or before you start
It's
primary
recommended
education.
11 to 12 is
Yes,
when you
11 to 12.
start. Yes.
I think, though, your bill really targets or focuses on more of a, at least, maybe not adults, but approaching post-secondary education, a college-age population. Is that correct?
That's correct. These are past the time that the recommendation is that they originally start the doses around 11 or 12, but they've also found it to be effective up until about 26 years of age, so that if we capture these young people that are in college and give them the opportunity to get this vaccination, it still has the potential to be very effective.
So that's a decision that a person can make as an adult,
Yes.
as an informed decision, not something that's being compelled upon them by the state or by a school or whatever before they reach the age of majority.
Absolutely.
And then with respect to, is there any fiscal note associated with this legislation?
I don't have that there is one.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
See if you got one.
Nope, I see we haven't.
We do have one now, and there's no significant fiscal implication.
But again, I do want to visit with you further on the bill, look forward to the testimony, but I know that there are some concerns about this. I think they're reasonable, that folks have we all have an interest in keeping government out of our lives. By the same token, we also have, as a government, we have a duty and I think a responsibility to act in the best interest of our constituents and provide information where they can make the best information for their own personal health. So I look forward to working with this on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Now, the chair calls Michelle Evans. Ms. Evans, thank you for being here today. We show you as registered as Michelle Evans, testifying on behalf of yourself and Texans for Vaccine Choice, testifying on the legislation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Kempel, Vice Chair Paul, and committee members. As a medical liberty advocacy organization, we strive to be conscious of language within proposed legislation which could have downstream implications for the citizens of Texas, particularly its children and youth, such as why HB 989 is on our website bill watch list. We, of course, applaud efforts to combat infectious disease and cancer, but want to make sure that any efforts to do so would not have the potential to encroach upon vaccine choice or informed consent. The medical community recognizes that most cases of HPV are benign, and for over 90% of women, HPV will clear up on its own. Progression to cervical cancer is rare, and other types of HPV-related cancers are even more uncommon. Detection is the single most significant factor for preventing an HPV infection from becoming persistent. With this in mind, it's important to not be singularly focused on the most widely marketed prevention strategy, being the HPV vaccination series, but rather detection. Therefore, we've asked Representative Howard to amend language in the bill which refers to prevention or preventing by replacing it with detection or detecting. By doing so, we can ensure that not only will this strategy be the most efficacious, but also one that will not give rise to future vaccine requirements for the higher education student population. Thank you.
Ms. Evans, thank you. Members, we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 989? Seeing none, the chair recognizes Representative Howard to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Absolutely, we need to have detection, and pap smears are a part of this as well, but all of the medical community recommends that this is a key component to ensuring the health of particularly young women, but anyone can get this, men as well. And so I would respectfully ask for your favorable consideration. And if there's no other questions, I close.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Clardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And appreciate your closing comments there and the witness's testimony. And I do appreciate, I guess I'm a little confused. I've seen this comment about detection rather than prevention. But I think if we look back on the history of the development of vaccines in mankind in the last 100 years, one of the reasons we've gone from a lifespan anticipation of 40 years to 80 years. We've seen that double. I think one of the primary reasons has been because of a very active vaccine programs, going back to Louis Pasteur and then Dr. Salk. I'm a proud member of the Rotary Club. What we've done for polio vaccines around the world has been remarkable to really lower the level of human misery. I think what this vaccine is intended to do is really attack and limit the spread of one of the more aggressive and dangerous cancers, particularly for females. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And again, detection is a big part of it. But I think if we have a proven vaccine that works, and not without some downside, there is no such thing as a foolproof, risk-free vaccine, and that has to be monitored. But again, we have a track record here with this vaccine.
We have a track record of extreme safety and effectiveness.
And so, but your bill does not require, and one of the concerns, and again, I get it. I would caution you with one thing, Representative Howard. If in the last 2 or 3 years have taught me anything, it's that when I hear somebody say all the medical community supports this, that does not fill me with confidence and give me warm and fuzzies, and that it is something I can absolutely rely upon, because I really haven't seen anything lately where everybody agrees on everything, particularly within the medical community, and that's okay. That's what scientific debate should be about. I think that we want to be respectful of, particularly with minors, parents' involvement and their decisions for their children, and also that we don't mandate anything for participation, whether it be in higher education or in employment, whether you did or did not engage in any vaccine. So again, we find ourselves, that's why they pay us the big bucks, to come up with these balancing acts between what's in the best interest of our community, but also respecting individual constitutional rights.
Well, as you mentioned, medicine and science are evolving sciences, and they continue to evolve as they study things and make decisions about what is most effective. And to compare this to COVID, which I think is what you were doing, certainly that was a rapid response that continued to evolve as information became apparent, as evidence became apparent. So there were some things perhaps along the way that gave people, unfortunately, the idea that you couldn't trust science and medicine. But in fact, this has been around since 2006. It's been studied continuously since then. And there have not been instances of anything that has been presented that would indicate that there's any reason to not trust what the medicine and science are saying about this particular vaccine in terms of its safety and its effectiveness.
Right. And I appreciate that, and I'll certainly work with you to make sure we stay focused on the relevant facts about this particular legislation and this particular vaccine. All right, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll recognize you again to close.
Thank you. I close.
Thank you. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending.
The chair lays out. Thank you. The chair lays out House Bill 2804 and recognizes Chairman Kemple to explain the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have a committee substitute.
All right. Chair represents Chairman Kemple and offers up committee substitute House Bill 2804.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To date, more than 30 states, including Texas, have passed some version of NIL, name, image, likeness legislation. We have seen states pass laws, amend laws, and states such as Alabama pass a law and then repeal a law. Any state that does not have a state law is required to follow the ever-evolving and confusing NCAA guideline for NIL. The 87th legislature passed SB 1385, which at the time gave Texas one of the more competitive NIL laws in the country. It balanced the interests of both the student athlete and our universities while ensuring the student part of the student athlete remained at the forefront. Since we passed our law 2 years ago, the college sports landscape continues to evolve, and as a result, Texas must ensure its own NIL law remains competitive with other states. HB 2804 clarifies that universities are allowed to determine what official team activities are. Student athletes are prohibited from engaging in NIL opportunities during official team activities. It also clarifies that NIL records are protected student records and that universities do not need to seek an opinion from the Attorney General regarding such matters. The bill removes a prohibition on student athletes being able to use real and intellectual property of the university so long as they receive permission from the university and compensates the university consistent with market rates. 2804 allows for all public-private universities to assist student athletes with identifying or assisting with opportunities for a currently enrolled student athlete to earn compensation from a third party for the use of the student athlete's NIL, so long as they are not compensated for such involvement nor involved in influencing the decision of the student athlete. To be clear, universities are still prohibited from paying student athletes directly, but this will allow universities to help student athletes along the way. The bill also clarifies that no governing body can enforce a rule or requirement that prohibits any Texas institution from participating in intercollegiate athletics or penalizes the institution for participating in any activity authorized under the proposed bill. This is important because earlier this year, NCAA adopted a new bylaw that puts the burden on schools accused of violating NCAA rules to disprove the allegation or otherwise face the consequences. This means that enforcement staff can presume a violation occurred based on circumstantial evidence such as a news story or a tip. 2804 maintains the requirements that student athletes are not employees of the university. The bill offers student athletes the opportunity to attend a financial literacy class offered by the institution and continues the prohibition on NIL activities for alcohol, tobacco products, steroids, sports betting, casino gambling. A firearm a student athlete cannot legally purchase or sexually oriented businesses. Other states continue to update their NIL laws. California, for example, is likely to pass this year, believe it or not, a revenue sharing bill with their student athletes. While the modest updates of HB 2804 don't go anywhere near what California is attempting unless Congress acts, it is vital that Texas and all its public-private universities stay competitive in the NIL arena. This is exactly what this legislation seeks to do. If we don't act now, it'll be 2 more years before any other opportunity in competing states will continue to pass Texas by. I'd like to mention that the committee substitute to 2804 remains a work in progress. I'm committed to working with stakeholders from all our institutions to craft legislation that ensures we meet the needs of our institutions and that Texas remains competitive in collegiate athletics. With that said, I know we have a couple of witnesses from the athletic departments from our public and private institutions here to offer testimony, and I'd ask for the right to close.
Members, anybody got questions for Chairman Kempel on his bill? Representative Travis? Representative Clardy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Kempel, you mentioned in your layout a congressional approach, congressional legislation. I've heard that. I'm not seeing anything about it. I don't know the specifics or details of it. Do we have any?
I don't know that there's any momentum. I hadn't heard anything to date or lately, or if there's anything in the process of being. And until there's something, NCAA, but certainly if there's a congressional act or to the feds act on it, there's no consistent measure, and it is, to use an old cliche, the Wild West out there, and to make sure, and this legislation, the language is brought to us from our universities. We're working closely, whether it be the state university, an ICAP member, everybody, that's qualified or is able to participate in NIL brought this to us. We're working with them closely to make sure, I think most importantly, that we stay competitive with other states, and we do it in a manner that we can stay competitive with other states when even we're not in legislative session. So that our intent of the bill is to, give us every competitive opportunity that we have going forward.
I will tell you, I don't have a great deal of confidence in a federal solution based upon what I've seen our federal government do in the last few years, nor do I have much confidence in the NCAA. In fact, I think if you were to trace it back where this problem came from and how it could have been addressed in a timely, reasonable, fair manner.
Completely agree to you. We're having this discussion right now.
Yeah, they missed the boat on this.
Yes, sir.
And so I do have confidence in this chamber, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. Look forward to working with you on it. And as a side note, I read it, I was telling Chairman Burns next to me that I read a story last night at SI. Our two Texas teams that got beat was by a team that had a very, shall we just say, robust use of NIL on several key members of the team that now is going to the Final Four. So this does have the potential of putting us at a significant disadvantage competitively, but we don't want it to be the Wild West. So this is an important issue for those of us that are old jocks and sports fans, and I think that includes a whole lot of Texans. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I'll point out that the three members of this committee, yourself, myself, you, and Chairman Burns could have been beneficiaries of NIL back in the day, I think. Is that right? Get you a pair of new FitJoys.
I think we're all
some
still
top
available.
flights, maybe.
We might have some eligibility left. We're still available.
I certainly do. I have eligibility left.
All right, I hope we don't get to that. Representative Busey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it hard to believe that Representative Clardy could have gotten an NIL contract back in the day, but here's my only question. I plan to support this bill. I think it's a great bill. I agree with you. We need NCAA was late on this. We should be ahead. I have one hesitation, and I only bring it up because you mentioned you'd be willing to keep looking in the committee sub, and we can talk to witnesses about this, but why are we removing the requirement on the financial literacy? I'd like to.
Well, we'll get into that too. That's one of the key parts that we're talking to. It's the requirement or the possibility, one of the two. That's okay. Part of our discussion going forward.
Great. That was my only thing.
Yes, sir. And we had a discussion about that this morning. So yes, sir, it is being addressed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Members, anybody else? All right, and we'll move to witnesses and reserve your right to close.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman. The chair calls Burok Ross. Ross Burok. No. Oh, sorry. Chris Holmes, Baylor University. Sorry about that.
We hadn't had many Smiths in here today.
Bjork. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Holmes, you got that little statement you want him to read?
He's representing Baylor University.
Yeah, we want to confirm that you're representing Baylor University in your name, and you're neutral?
He's on.
Yeah, and neutral on the bill.
That's correct. Yes, I am Chris Holmes. I'm the General Counsel at Baylor University, and we are, I'm here today to speak on the bill. Chairman Kempel, Vice Chair Paul, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. Baylor University hopes to work with the chair and the committee and appreciates the conversations we've had already as we work together on House Bill 2804. Baylor's president, Linda Livingstone, is currently the chair of the Board of Governors of the NCAA. She is working on the national issues with Congress on these issues and is offering her assistance as we work with the state of Texas to continue to have a reasonable approach in this area. Earlier this month, SMU, Rice, TCU, and Baylor, along with ICUT, provided comments to House Bill 2804. In that letter, we expressed our appreciation for the measured and balanced approach taken by Texas when it adopted its law in 2021. That law permitted student athletes to benefit from NIL while prohibiting the use of NIL as an unfair recruiting inducement. Our chief concern with the substitute bill relates to its prohibition against enforcement by the conferences against inappropriate institutional involvement in NIL. Under Texas's law that currently exists, there is no enforcement mechanism. There's no policing entity. And so if this substitute bill passes and the NCAA or the voluntary athletic conferences that our institutions are members of are prohibited from enforcement, then Texas has not helped address the Wild Wild West. Texas's law would actually increase the Wild Wild West. So we are concerned that the amendment's language would create a Wild Wild West environment where the state law has no enforcement mechanism and the voluntary athletic conferences are prohibited from enforcement. Now, we believe we can work with the chair and the committee to develop more measured language to improve Texas's law, and we look forward to doing so. Thank you.
I got a few questions. Do you have any questions? So since your president is the chair of the NCAA Board of Governors, do you have any perspectives on how this bill might impact her work on employment benefits and NIL issues in NCAA?
Thank you. Yes, we are very concerned, and Chair Kempel referred to the legislation that's currently in California that's been introduced there. Higher education institutions are also monitoring litigation that is seeking to convert student athletes into employees. The National Labor Relations Board is also interested and is currently working to move a private institution in California and find that their football players are employees. So it's very important at this point from President Livingstone's perspective, and I believe the NCAA's perspective, that the steps that are taken in this area, particularly as it relates to the relationship that institutions have with those payments of NIL, the closer that relationship gets, we are concerned that the courts and the NLRB are going to see the closeness of that relationship as creating facts that contribute to the finding that these student athletes should be employees. So therefore, the NCAA, President Livingstone, and Baylor University are cautious and are requesting that the state of Texas be moderate and balanced like it was in 2021 as it continues to move forward in this area, and that the NCAA continue to be allowed to enforce its rules as necessary. Thank you.
Yeah, with those comments, we want to be confirmed. You are still speaking on behalf of Baylor University and no comment on relation to NCAA.
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you.
Sounds good. And then you mentioned about the enforcement. Does the NCAA have any kind of enforcement with this currently across the nation?
They do. They've adopted interim guidance, and what, as I looked at the substitute bill, what I was concerned about is that Texas law does a very good job in covering the waterfront. But Texas's law does not have the regulatory experience in recognizing and specifically driving into situations where the institutions or the institution's employees might have more of a relationship than is best for a level playing field in higher education athletics. If I may give an example, the NCAA current guidance on this issue would prohibit a athletic department staff member, think of a coach, from having a company and setting up a company and then providing an NIL opportunity to a student on that coach's team. I'm very concerned that under the Texas law, because Texas specifically permits individuals, corporations, and other associations other than the institution to have NIL deals, that this would create a gap. And because Texas law does not have an enforcement or investigatory process, there's going to be a gap there where the NCAA says, well, if it's a coach, they probably shouldn't be involved in the NIL deal. Under Texas law, I'm afraid that that's a gap that would be left open.
All right, members.
Thank you, Chairman
Go ahead.
Paul. And Mr. Holmes, I heard it said a couple times, I think the layout in your testimony, that the conferences that the member institutions voluntarily associate with, and we're going to set aside issues of realignment for the time and how that times out. But I think you said that they can't enact rules concerning NIL. I don't understand why this can't be addressed on a conference level rather than an NCAA national level or a institution level.
So my comments specifically relate to a committee substitute that has a provision that would prevent a conference, NCAA, or a regional athletic conference, Big 12, from regulating anything that Texas specifically requires or that Texas permits under its law. And that permission creates what I think is kind of a gray area. There's a gray area there, and that's where Texas's law is great. I'm just not sure it's got the breadth of experience that the NCAA has.
If I'm tracking you, so Baylor, as a member of the Big 12, can't compel the Big 12 to enact or enforce rules consistent with Texas law.
Correct.
And conversely, they won't take independent steps. Maybe they do voluntarily, but there's really no way for the legislation to effectively do that. But here's something that Chairman Kemple said, and I read this somewhere else, and he's confirmed this. I'm very concerned about the NCAA's approach, that they've flipped the standard of review on this from a traditional American sense of fair play, justice, and equal protection, and all those things we hold dear, from innocent to proven guilty, to now it would be determined by the NCAA, who does not have a great reputation for being fair, as they treat different institutions very, very disparately. But to say, okay, we've deemed you to be guilty, come in here and prove your innocence, that you did not do something violative of NCAA rules. Would you care to address that concern?
Yes, and with due notice that I do not speak on behalf of the NCAA. But I did hear the conversation related to Miami. And my understanding of the NCAA's decision to flip the burden of proof actually, I believe, rose out of a Miami investigation. And it's important to understand, I think, that the NCAA itself is a voluntary organization. It is not an arm of the federal government. It doesn't have subpoena power. And so what happened, I believe, in the Miami situation was they had a donor that the NCAA could not compel information from. And so that individual, the NCAA expected something had gone wrong, but couldn't compel it. They don't have the subpoena power. And so what they're trying to do by flipping that burden of proof is to coerce the institutions into cooperating and providing the information that the NCAA needs in order to determine whether or not improper inducements took place. Those improper inducements, that's a language that Texas has. And so what the NCAA is trying to do is they don't have a whole lot of leverage over these boosters, but they do have leverage over the institutions.
But historically, they've exercised a great deal of power, and to my view, my opinion, they've been coercive in those efforts, and it depended upon how your status is as an institution. If you're one of the blue bloods, top of the food chain, well, maybe not so much. But if you're Division III, Division II, some lesser institution, perhaps some university in Texas that received the death penalty, that you have been treated historically very unfairly and differently. And so the notion of flipping this thing upside down, you got to come prove your innocence, I find that very, very troubling, which again brings me back to why I appreciate Chairman Kemple bringing this bill. Let's find a Texas solution. Once again, Texas ought to lead the way. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Members? Representative Busey.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to we've received feedback letters independent colleges, among others, talking about the financial literacy class. Can you talk about the importance of it being required, or is it okay, permissive? Do you have thoughts and feedback to help guide us on that?
Yes, absolutely. So that is one of the changes that ICUT and Baylor, SMU, TCU, and RISE provided comments back. We do believe that the financial literacy course, I believe it's a 5-hour minimum, should continue to be required. We've seen the value that that has in the student athletes that our athletic departments serve. Interestingly, many of you have heard of the NCAA's Transformation Committee as they've gone through governance review themselves. And my understanding is that the NCAA does intend to require institutions to continue to require financial aid, financial literacy courses for their students. So this is something that the NCAA has published that they are in favor of as well.
Members, anybody else? All right, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Ross Bjork.
All right, the chair calls Ross Bjork, and make sure you state your name and your position and who you represent.
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's the all-name panelists today. So my name is Ross Bjork, and I'm the Director of Athletics at Texas A&M University. I'm here to speak on the legislation here today, House Bill 2804. So thank you for the opportunity. I think and really believe that Chairman Kemple laid out the key issues that all of us are facing as practitioners who work daily in college athletics with our student athletes and with our coaches and athletic department staff members. The word evolution applies as we sit here today. There might be something that we read on social media regarding college athletics that may have changed since we walked in this room at 10 o'clock this morning. And as we sat here 2 years ago, this was really the next step in the evolution of college athletics, is to support our student athletes around the topic of name, image, and likeness, while understanding that our athletes should remain students first and foremost. We support them in every endeavor that they participate in once they step foot on our campuses, from their health, their performance, to their academics. And when all of this started, everyone took the approach that it was best that we have sort of an arm's length approach, that between the student athlete and the entity, a business, the relationship should remain between that student and that entity. As we sit here 2 years later, times have changed, and that evolution requires that we support our student athletes at the highest level. The expectation that our student athletes have is that we are more involved, the universities are more involved. And until we have that national standard, maybe that will come from the federal government, maybe that will come from our governing body, the NCAA. But until then, we believe that the Texas state law should keep us as competitive as possible. And these changes, these modifications allow that to happen. So we appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Members? Questions? Your question?
I was just going to thank you, Ms. Bjork. Thank you for being here today. I mean, do you take this opportunity to address any of the concerns that some of the other institutions in the state may have?
Yeah, if I can touch on the NCAA standard and the changes that were made recently regarding the presumption of responsibility. You could have the best compliance program, the best general counsel, the best belt and suspenders program, educating your donors, educating your student athletes. The NCAA could still come in and charge you with a violation without any proof whatsoever. So if there's language that needs to be cleaned up in this bill, we're happy to participate in that. But we believe that the overburdened approach that the NCAA has taken regarding presumed responsibility should be part of this bill. It should protect the universities in Texas who are trying to do it the right way and who have every program in place possible, but still could be held responsible for something that they had nothing to do with. So we believe that approach is applicable, and we hope for your healthy consideration around that matter.
And as the state of Texas and its institutions that are eligible, we're just swinging at moving targets all over the place, aren't we?
Until we have that federal legislation at
Exactly.
federal governments, we could be looking at a temporary solution here until something may change a year from now, 2 years from now. Clearly, we pivoted the last 2 years, and so we're asking for the best bill in today's environment, knowing that it's going to shift and evolve continuously.
And I hope to get a mechanism in the legislation that allow us to do that, like I said, when we're not in legislation, just make sure that we can stay competitive, because it is ever evolving, and like you said, it's probably changed in the last 2.5 hours.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman, most importantly, the student athletes expect us to support them and be more involved, and that's what we're trying to
We're here to
accomplish.
support them as well, which is the most important part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clardy?
Thank you, Chairman. And Mr. Burke, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
I could not agree more with what you just said. It's important for us, the institutions, to stand behind their students. I think it's equally important that this institution, that the Texas legislature, stand behind our higher education institutions, both private and public, and let them know when the NCAA wants to change its rules in the middle of the game and impose this incredible burden. I don't think people may appreciate how significant this shift of the presumption of innocence is. I mean, it's just fundamental to our system of justice that we're not going to abide that. We're not going to see our institutions that we support either with public dollars or with other matters of the state and the people we represent. That I think a strong signal needs to be sent to them that we will not tolerate that in Texas, and I appreciate you coming here and testifying to that.
Ms. Clardy, I agree with you 100%, changing the rules in the middle of it, and Mr. Bjork, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, members, any other questions? All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 2804? If not, the chair recognizes Chairman Kemple to close on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do look forward to working with everybody as we go forward. Thank you all for being here today. NIL is upon us, whether we like it or not, Mr. Clardy. So it's our duty and responsibility with this committee, with the state, to help these universities, more importantly, these student athletes, maneuver through the treacherous waters that have been laid before us. It's really kind of heartbreaking sometimes that we're actually losing intercollegiate athletics as we know it, as we participated in. But the fact is, it's here. Let's get it right. We'll make sure that we do that and include everybody going forward. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll close.
All right, thank you, Chairman Kemple. The committee substitute for HB 2804 is withdrawn, and if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. The rejection, the here is none, and the bill is left pending. All right, the chair lays out House Bill 4434 and recognizes Chairman Kemple to explain the bill.
Chair, I have a substitute.
Yeah, all right. Chair Kemple offers a committee substitute, House Bill 4434.
Hold on. He's the chair. You're not the chair. Did you say chair?
Well,
Just
what did you put it? All right. Representative Kemple offers a committee, it's his bill. Yeah. Representative Clardy offers committee substitute, House Bill 4434.
He does.
Yeah.
Members,
are there any questions for Chairman Kemple?
Thank you. I'll lay it out for you, Mr. Chairman. The committee substitute to 4434 is alleged council draft with no substantive changes. It includes an effective date of September 1st, 2023. Last session, SB 1888 established the Texas First Early High School Completion Program, known as Texas First, which allows public high school students who demonstrate early readiness for college to graduate early from high school. The bill also established the Texas First Scholarship to provide financial aid for students who graduate this program. Currently, only institutions designated as research institutions or emerging research universities may participate in this program. HB 4434 expands the list of institutions eligible to participate in Texas First to include public institutions of higher education in Texas, including comprehensive regional universities, community colleges, and state and technical colleges. This would provide more options for students to pursue the post-secondary experience that is right for them. I know we have a resource witness, Mr. Keller, and I will ask for the right to close, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Chairman Kemple. Are there any Okay, are any questions for Chairman Kemple on this bill? All right, not hearing of that. Is that the only one? It's just for you for resource?
No.
Oh, okay, all right.
Monica Huffer.
All right, the chair calls Monica Huffer. Thanks. Make sure you state your name, position on the bill, and who you represent.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Monica Huffer, and I'm here to testify in support of HB 4434, and I represent myself. But I'm here to testify in support of it because I'm an early graduate myself, and as a part of my early graduation experience, I was required to transfer ISDs, which I was only able to because my mother is a high school English teacher who worked at the ISD I was transferring into in order to graduate early. And in reading the bill, something that caught my eye was a change in language from ISD's may to ISD's must, or language which allows students to have a choice in early graduation, as opposed to only students enrolled in districts which selectively allow for early graduation to have the opportunity to graduate early. So I'm, as an early graduate, here to testify for early graduates in support of the bill, and thank you for your time.
All right, members, anybody got questions for this witness? All right, thank you, Miss. Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming down. That's it. All right. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4434? If not, the chair recognizes Chairman Kemple to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll close.
Thank you, Chairman Kemple. The committee substitute for House Bill 4434 is withdrawn. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Chair lays out House Bill 4437 and recognizes Chairman Kemple to explain the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have a sub.
All right. Representative Clardy offers a committee substitute for House Bill 4437. Members, are there questions for Chairman Kemple?
Go ahead and lay
out.
Yeah, yes, sir. That's a good idea. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The substitute is a ledge council draft with non-substantive changes. HB 4437 ensures data protection for information collected for current, prospective, and former high school students to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. This bill would require the coordinating board to protect data for those considering higher education the same way that institutions currently do for students. 4437 would require information provided to the coordinating board by current, prospective, and former students to be considered confidential student records under the Texas Public Information Act, and that such records may only be released in accordance with the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. With that, I have a resource witness. If anybody like that, would ask for the right to close.
We only have a resource witness here, so.
Okay. All right, members, any questions for Chairman Kemple? All right. Does anybody need to have access to the resource witness? Okay, with that, I'll leave it back to you, Chairman, to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll close.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 4437? If not, the chair recognizes Chairman Kemple to close. She has
closed.
Thank you, Chairman Kemple. The committee substitute for HB 4437 is withdrawn, and if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there an objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. With that, return it back to Chairman Kemple.
Members, that concludes today's agenda. Is there any further business for the committee to address? If not, the chair moves to adjourn. Is there any objection? Hearing none, the committee stands adjourned, subject to call of the chair.